Okay, welcome back to Delboy's Garage, and today I just want to cover something that comes up periodically on your servicing. It's going to be changing of the clutch fluid on Suzuki Bandit. Now, any Japanese bike, any British bike, any motorcycle, period, that has hydraulic actuation systems, that fluid needs to be changed. Hydraulic brake fluid is hydrosorbic, which, boring word, meaning it absorbs fluid and moisture from the atmosphere. It does, and I'll show you how it does in a minute, because many people have asked questions in the past, how can it absorb fluid or water or moisture when it's sealed inside a hydraulic system? I'll show you. There is a way, and it goes in there. And once moisture gets into your hydraulic system, it starts to cause rust on the internal parts. They cause little flakes, and those little flakes move around and they block the tiny little oilways inside your hydraulic system, and they make your hydraulics basically stop working. And they can even do worse things, like they can corrode on the seals, and they can make it leak and cause problems with your brakes. So every 2 years it's normally recommended to change the clutch or brake fluid on your bike. Now that's purely a periodic thing, it's not down to mileage. Sadly, even if you leave your bike and you ride it once every 4 weeks for a mile and put it back again, I'm afraid you still need to do it. There is no way around it. That's because time, moisture, humidity in the atmosphere will degrade your brake and clutch fluid. It needs to be done. Now there are ways you can tell. It will drop inside the system. Some detrimental things, one of the most detrimental things with getting moisture in your brake fluid is that moisture is water. Water boils. Now brake fluid, for the life of me, I don't know what it's made from. I really don't. For the longest I've been doing stuff like this, it's not an oil, because oil is a crude oil distillate, and effectively oil would burn. So the red hot brake fluid on the back of the pads when your brakes are doing their hardest, that would not be good. So it's not an oil, it's not a spirit, because that would catch fire. It's certainly not water based, because it would just rust. It has got some sort of thing. It might be silicon based. Maybe one of you clever boys can tell me. But basically, when you get water in this stuff, it mixes. If you had half a cup of brake fluid and half of water, you tipped them together, you couldn't tell which was which. It's not like oil, it doesn't separate, it stays the same. So you don't know how much water is in your brake and clutch fluid, you don't know. Now when you get moisture and water in there, the fluid that's up against the back of the pistons on the brake calipers naturally is adjacent to the red hot brake pad. So when you're heavy braking in the summer, you can make your discs glow if you're on a track day. And that heat will go through, and that will cause the water vapour in the brake fluid to turn into steam. Steam is a gas, gas is compressible, you end up with spongy brakes and you end up with brake fade. And that's not very clever. So it needs to be changed. I think we've established that. So I'm going to show you very quickly how to do it, and while I'm at it I'm going to show you how that fluid, or how that moisture gets in there. So stick around, stay tuned, let's change the clutch fluid on the Bandit. Right, we start everything, we're going to just do the clutch today. The brakes have been done the other day when I was messing around cleaning and rebuilding the calipers. So they've all been done. The clutch side hasn't been done for 3 years on this bike. I have kind of neglected it, which isn't very clever, I know. And I can tell, because if you come look in the front here, when we look, this is the window where you can see, probably at an angle, that the fluid in there is black as you're at. That really is. And the reason it goes black, the reason that fluid goes black, is very simple. It's got water in it, that was like I said just now, and that water causes rust particles and so on, and that just makes it filthy inside there. You get little tiny crumbs of all sorts of cack, and it just needs to be changed. Simple as that. So while we're doing it, I'm just going to take the top off. It is a bit of a how-to, so I'll show you this. These screws on here are machine set screws. They're very, very hard stainless screws, but you can still mince them. So get a screwdriver that fits, get it in there, make sure it's firmly in, and gently, while pressing downwards as hard as you can, just lift those screws. If when you do that they won't turn and they start to mince, stop. Don't mince them completely, because then you've got to drill them out, which is what you do. If these screws, if you've minced them out, and it's common, they tend to lock themselves up and seize. If that happens, it's ever so simple. Just get a drill bit, take the top of the screw off, and then you take the cap off, and the remainder of the screw will just come out. It's not a problem. But you shouldn't have done that, because if you're the person who's changing your fluid, then you'll find that you put them in nice and gently so they won't seize. Now if you've got a nice bike, unlike my piece of shit that I have here, you might want to just do this. And the way it is just pop a cloth around it for any spillage before you even take that off. So to keep those screws safe, because they do like to find their way to the floor. Now the cap comes off, so, and when we take a little look at the underside of the cap, what we have here, if you look, there's a little tiny kind of groove deliberately placed in there and going through here, and the same the other side. Now that little groove is designed to allow, when you take this support board off the back, inside here, this is a spring. As the fluid drops, now when you have your brake pads, when your brake pads wear, naturally the pad gets thinner. The piston has to come out to keep the pad adjacent to the disc. The pad face can't run any more than about probably 50 thou off the disc, otherwise they won't actuate properly. So the piston comes out to keep that worn pad as it wears up adjacent to the disc. And as that piston comes out, it needs more fluid in behind it, and that fluid only comes from the reservoirs. So as the reservoir level drops, as the pads wear, this thing here, come on in, man, this thing here drops down. This kind of concertina affair is designed so that this can stay sealed, because this white plastic board presses on the top here. And if you look in the centre, there's a tiny hole right in the centre of that. Now when that's in there, air goes through that little crack we showed. It goes in across the top here and in that hole. That's where the air goes in. So as the fluid level drops, air must go in. Remember the laws of physics. If the fluid level drops, and the fluid level dropping, you have to allow air in behind it. If you don't do that, then it won't drop, it will stay there. You'll get a vacuum effect, and that won't be good. But in this one, if you come and take a look, lifting that off, look what we have in there. First of all, no fluid. And that's typically what happens because the clutch, this is the clutch side, the clutch plates, all 7 of them, have a soft material on that wears. As that material wears, as the clutch wears over the years, this bike's done 43,000 miles, the clutch will probably be at least 3/4 of the way worn out now, so I will have to replace it at some point. But as they wear, they get thinner, and as the clutch actuation gets less, the fluid level gets less, which is why changing it, not only for the sake of the fact that it absorbs moisture, it also drops as well, so you need to check that. So I'll put this safe over here along with the rubber gasket. This rubber gasket seals, so you don't get air on top of the fluid, but the air has to go on top of this rubber thing to allow it to press down. Now that air going in and out of there gradually weeps its way underneath, and that moisture gets in, and that's how it gets in. So that's safe there. Now this fluid in here is pretty nasty, and it's pretty sharp. It's not going anywhere, so with a cloth, obviously I'm not going to push that down through the system. All I'm going to do is poke an old duster or a rag in there and soak all that out, because I don't want to push that filth, there we are, down in through the system. There we are. And this is a cleaning job. It's a housekeeping job. It must be done periodically, as we said. So look inside here, Ben. Just have a little look. Look at that. Yeah. That filth is brake fluid, and the rubber from that seal just coming off, and just cack. It's just time, rubber against water, moisture. Call it what you like, but it just needs to be got rid of. So we clean all the inside, and we need some fresh brake fluid. Okay, sealed can. If you haven't got a sealed container of this stuff, if you're not sure how long it's been open, don't use it, because again, as much as this stuff can absorb moisture from the atmosphere, it can also absorb in the can, in the pot. So, fresh pot if you can, if you want the job to be as best as possible, and just top it up, because we're going to pump this through. Just going to top it right up to roughly the top, so that's ready to start changing. And when you're not using it, just as a workshop practice, when you're not using, you can put the lid on. Is how you might knock it over, as well as it absorbing it. Now, the next bit is quite important. This is the actual bleeding job. It's a bleeding job, mate. Right, a couple of bits you need for the job. Something to put your jar on, and a bit of tubing. Now, it doesn't have to be a specialised brake bleeding tube, but just a piece of tube that fits over the bleed nipple. This is the hydraulic hose here that works its way down from that reservoir. So you don't have to trace it down, it's not important, there it is. And this on the top, come in close, man. This little rubber thingamabob pops off out the way. That protects your bleed nipple. That's effectively the exit port for your system. Another little point, a workshop point. This is an 8mm bolt, bleed nipple, whatever. If you're going to buy 8mm spanners, buy really good quality ones because they're accurate. When spanners get down to under 10mm, they can be a little bit iffy because the cheap Chinese ones, they plate them, they chrome plate them like this, which is all very shiny, but they don't take effect that will then change the size on the inside, so you can get inaccurate sizing on cheap spanners. Use good quality ones like this and you're okay. Right, before you do anything, just crack that off, make sure it's free. And what we do is put the spanner on first, push this, come in close, push that on, and then we just pop the tube onto the bleed nipple. It's just a, there we go, yeah, it just needs to go on top. Right, there we are. Push that on so it's firmly on there. Now, when you open that now, you can open and close that without the tube coming off. Okay, tube in there. Now there's a little technique to this, ever so simple. You pull, go away a little bit so you can see all of it. So put a little bit of weight on the clutch. Being the clutch, if you keep pulling it, unlike brakes, it will come right in and you'll end up squirting some fluid out like that. Which is why you protect your paintwork. Thankfully my paintwork don't matter. If you want to protect your paintwork for real, a great way to do it is a big old thick blanket. Put a blanket over your bike. If I was doing this on the Hayabusa, I'd just cover the bike with a big thick blanket. If necessary, a bin liner underneath so it can't soak through, so in case you spill it, because it's corrosive, take paint off. So put some weight on the lever, just put your hand on it, put some weight on it so that you're pulling. And down here, with the jar prepared, just undo the bleed nipple and you'll feel your hand will come in. It will sink in as you're pushing the fluid out. Come on down, Pen. Now, as your hands come all the way into the bar, it's pushed out a quantity of the fluid, which you can see here in the form of this black stuff that's about to come out. But up the top, if you take a look, this is in at the moment. Now watch the level as I release. Probably can't see it.
Can't see it.
It drops a little bit. So put your hand on it again. Just give a little bit of pressure, then whilst you're holding the pressure on, undo that and you'll see it squeeze out. Now, before you let your hand off the lever, do the nipple back up. Let's get past the nipple joke, shall we? Come on, focus. So the technique is, put the weight on the lever, undo and do up. Now as you undo, the lever will sink as it pumps fluid through. But don't let the lever out again. If you let the lever out with the nipple open, you'll suck air in the bottom end. And that will mean you've then got a system that's not bled properly. But I just want you to watch this. I'm going to pump this a few times. Come and watch the colour up here. Doing it back up. That colour of that fluid is typically why you change your brake fluid. I see it. There we go. Keep going. So the technique is to undo and then do up again the nipple, the bleed nipple, whilst you put the pressure on. Hold the pressure on while it's happening, then you won't suck air into the system. And keep going, and already, if you look at the colour of the tube here, we can start to see the fluids coming through clear. And there is only one reservoir of fluid in the pipe. So once you've bled one reservoir through, you have changed your fluid. Okay, quick word to the wise, pop up the top. Now as we've seen now, I've pushed almost that much, almost the whole reservoir through. Do not let the fluid drop below that bottom hole down there, because obviously then you'll just suck air into the system. So just before it drops to that level, top it back up again, and we're going to now pump that lot through. So here we go. Do this gently because that squirts upwards. So if you do it, you don't want to do what I'm doing. Chuck the fluid out the top. Hold the pressure on, undo, do up, and then release. If you watch that as we go in, pressure on it there, undo, do up. So let it sink into the bar, then do the spanner up, then let it out, in that order. And you won't allow air into the system. It's the same with your brakes. This is exactly the same if you were doing this on brake calipers. No difference at all. Obviously protect things like your brake disc faces from fluid getting on them. It's just common sense. And every 2 years you'll find that this is necessary. The other side of it is, and I say this a lot, I say it about changing oil as well. If it's as cheap as it is, that pot brake fluid was, how much, Pen, you bought that?
5, 6 quid.
There you go. And I get 10 brake fluid changes out of that. It costs nothing and it takes this long. 5 minutes. Here we go. Now, if you look down this end, if you look in the tube now, the fluid coming out of that is crystal clear. That's the stuff that's going in the top. So I'm going to lock that off. That's it. And then just take the pipe off. Pipe out of the way. Now when you do this up, again, as usual, there is a torque setting for that. But, like I always say, it's up to you. You torque it up if you want to. I never bother. These you just nip them up gently. The bleed nipple is a taper. It's like a little tapered V that goes into a tapered hole. And it doesn't need to be leant on. Don't swing on it, monkey boy. It won't achieve anything other than seize it up or snap it off. Job done. There we are. Now, final part of it, up the top. Fluid's a little bit low because we've been bleeding it through. So when you top it up, if you look around this side, if you look at the inside of this glass, that glass is what you look through to see what the level is. So top it up to the top of the glass, which is about there. Doesn't need any more. Then because this earlier on was all minging black filthy, you got that lovely, lovely spotlessly clean fluid. Then you go and put the old rubber gasket in that's still got the black stuff on. So give that a good clean. First of all with shitty rag, necessary. Then a nice clean rag, because any particles, like I said just now, they could float around the hydraulics, and these weeny holes that you get in here will just get blocked up. So get that all spotlessly clean. There you go, like cleaning your dog's ear holes. Make sure you're getting all the folds. Pop that in the top. Make sure it's sealed. Don't put any jollop or any old rubbish in there. It goes in bone dry, just the brake fluid only. And then this. Again, spotlessly clean. New fresh rag. Pop that on. You can see that that touches all the way around. If any of it's caught in, it won't touch correctly. That goes that way around. Pop the screws back in, do it up. And again, don't lean on them, they're just screws. They're just gentle. Fingers on the top, honestly, fingers. None of this business, you'll just mince them out. They're tiny, tiny, tiny little threads into aluminium. That's it, that's all it needs, don't lean on it. There we go, wipe it all clean, and that's it. That is it. You've just changed the brake fluid, or clutch fluid in this instance, and taken that shit out of it. That's probably 30% water in there. Black as you're at. And it will look black through the glass, you can tell. Go out to your bike now, I challenge you. If you haven't done this before and you've had your bike 2 years, that means yours is more than 2 years old, doesn't it? So go out there, have a look through the little reservoir. If it's any darker than like a light lager, change it. Doesn't take long. There you go. Clutch fluid, changed. Ride safe. Take it easy. Thanks for watching Delboy's Garage. See you next time.